Welcome to the 15th Annual Bridges to the World International Film Festival. Tonight's film is the first in this year's series. World Artists Experience's vision is to bridge people and cultures across the world to develop mutual understanding. We welcome you and invite you to join us. Email wae@comcast.net. Following the screening of the film, we will have the opportunity to ask questions and have answers. Please use the Q&A function to submit questions for our panelists. World Artist Experience is grateful to the Embassy of Uruguay for making tonight's film possible. We especially extend our gratitude to Councilor Maria Fernanda Garcia for working with World Artist Experiences over a number of months to organize for tonight's film. Tonight, it is an honor to have Councilor Garcia join us. Fernanda Garcia has been a career diplomat of the Uruguayan Foreign Services since 2007. She currently serves as a cultural attaché of the Embassy of Uruguay in the United States. Before coming to Washington, she served as the Director of Consular Affairs at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Uruguay. Prior to that, she worked for the Directorate of Protocol and State Ceremonial. In her previous post, she was a cultural attaché of Uruguay in France. During that time, she also held the post of Deputy Chief of Mission in France. As well, she was a consul of Uruguay in Paris for a period of almost 3 years. When she entered the Foreign Service, she had the privilege of working in different areas of the Uruguayan Foreign Ministry, including the Secretariat of the Vice Minister of the Office of the Secretary General, the General Directorate of the Political Affairs, and Directorate of Multilateral Affairs. She attended classes in the Uruguayan Diplomatic Academy, has a degree in international relations from the Universidad de la República in Montevideo, Uruguay, and she studied at Douglas College in New Westminster, British Columbia, Canada, where she enrolled in the University Transfer Arts program. She is fluent in French, Spanish, and English, and has a working knowledge in Portuguese. Fernando, it's a privilege to have you here join us this evening. Thank you for introducing the film and being with us for the questions and answers and for arranging this film for tonight.
Thank you, Betty. Well, on behalf of the Embassy of Uruguay, I'd like to thank World Artist Experience for inviting us to participate in the Bridges to the World Film Festival. It is an honor for me to welcome you this evening for the screening of the Uruguayan film, Mr. Kaplan by Alvaro Breshner. The film was the official submission of Uruguay to the Best Foreign Language Film category of the 87th Academy Awards in 2015. Mr. Kaplan is a comedy, a drama, a mystery, and a thriller. It is the story of an aging retiree desperate for relevance, which plots to kidnap a German cafe owner he believes to be a former Nazi. Set in Montevideo in 1997, the Kaplans Jacob and Rebecca have been married for 50 years. He fled Poland just before the Nazi invasion, making his way to Uruguay, where he carved out a middle-class, reasonably happy life. Now, at 76, he is increasingly looked upon as an old man. He begins to ask himself some hard questions. Have I inspired anyone in any way? Did I accomplish anything remarkable? How useful was I? Jacob's sons are concerned their dad is beginning to lose his marbles, so they hire a former police officer as a driver and caretaker. The plot takes a twist when Jacob's granddaughter mentions the German owner of a cafe down the beach and his nickname, the Nazi. Jacob gets this crazy idea to kidnap the guy and smuggle him to Israel for a trial. Kaplan has been painted to be a kind of Don Quixote, seeking to make the world a better place by working off a case of survivor's guilt. The idea of capturing a real-life Nazi is too good to resist for him. With Wilson As his bumbling Sancho Panza, Kaplan sets out to capture his imagined nemesis. Well, I won't give you any more details and let you enjoy the film for yourselves. Thank you for joining us this evening and enjoy the show. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for the film, Mr. Kaplan. Fernanda, can you, there's a question that asks if you could tell about the filming in Uruguay.
Filming in Uruguay?
Yes.
Yes, well, Uruguay, the audio visual industry in Uruguay is relatively new. A little over 20 years, we've actually started to have more production and more films. Uruguay has, so the industry, it's been consolidated, and over the years, we have developed a lot of different programs that help fund films and provide different like tax exemptions, and we're trying to promote the country as a destination to film movies, not only our own production, but foreign productions as well. We have a lot of ad campaigns that are filmed in Uruguay, a lot of commercials. A lot of people don't know, but for example, Miami Vice was filmed in Uruguay. Blindness by the movie with Julianne Moore, it was also filmed in Uruguay. We have a lot of diverse locations, beaches, countryside, historic towns, large collections of buildings with really interesting architecture and architectural value that can pretend to be, you know, European cities or European locations. So we also have, we have developed a strong technical and artistic professionalism in the country as well. So that facilitates that, you know, foreign productions when they come to the country, that with all the different benefits that they receive from the government to promote their productions in Uruguay. So it's very open to that. And like I said, we have our own film industry. Sometimes we have Uruguayans have a very unique idiosyncrasy. They have a lot of quirks, and a lot of our films, they play into those cultural aspects. So sometimes there's humor that is hard to understand for foreigners when we try to export our films. There's things that are hard to follow. They don't understand. You know, you have to look at it through a certain point of view to understand the humor and to understand the culture.
Thank you. There's a question about the Montevideo, about travel in Uruguay. What is it like in Uruguay? More of the culture of the people. And there's a question like, is Montevideo close to the sea?
Montevideo is actually on the river, the Rio de la Plata, on the River Plate. So Uruguay is surrounded by water on the west and southern coast and towards the east. So we're on the Uruguay River, and the Uruguay River, we're on the east coast of South America, tucked in between Argentina and Brazil. We were created as a buffer state. So we have the Uruguay River on one side, the Rio de la Plata to the south of Montevideo, and Montevideo is actually the world's most southernmost capital city, even though it doesn't look like it on some of the world globes. So yes, Montevideo is on the river, and it connects directly to the ocean. So you don't realize when you're driving east along the coast, the river becomes an ocean. So it's a very broad river. So you have oceanic water coming in. It's like an estuary. So yes, Montevideo is on the coast. We have a very important port. Historically, our port would compete with the port in Buenos Aires. That was a historic rivalry when we were still a colony. And so yeah, we're on the coast. Uruguay is over 5,200 miles away from Washington. I looked that up this evening. It takes about 13 hours to get there, depending on the connections that you can get. But Uruguay, we have beaches, but we also have countryside. We also have hills. The beaches are very different. We have some like the ones that you saw in the movie that are underdeveloped, and they're very natural, and those are actually on the river. That doesn't look like a river, does it? So then you also have very developed beaches. Like we have a town called Punta del Este, which is an exclusive upscale beach town with very vibrant nightlife. So you have different options to choose from if you want something more laid back, or if you want, you know, the music, the food, the casinos. You have all those options to choose from. And if you go outside of the summer months, you also have in the countryside, you have bird watching, you have different festivals, music festivals, folk festivals, festivals that celebrate the gaucho culture. The gauchos are the cowboys in Uruguay, where they'll have demonstrations of horse wrangling, and you know, they'll have Uruguayan barbecue, asado. So yeah, there are a lot of different options for those of you that want to discover Uruguay.
There's a question about migration and immigration. Can you speak to that?
Yes, well, many Uruguayans immigrated from Uruguay during the dictatorship, and the dictatorship started in 1973 and it went through to 1983 roughly. So in that time, a lot of people left the country, escaping you know, political persecution. There was another big wave of Uruguayan immigration in the early 2000s due to a financial crisis that hit the region. But later on, you do have a lot of people immigrating from Uruguay, a lot of professionals that might not find great opportunities. They'll study abroad, and they'll end up staying or getting jobs in different countries. We also receive a lot of immigration. We have a growing expat community. A lot of North Americans have actually moved, a lot of Europeans, a lot of North Americans have moved to Uruguay, especially in the pandemic. We've had a lot more people coming to Uruguay, and we've had an influx of immigrants from Dominican Republic, from Cuba, and from Venezuela. For us, Uruguay is we're very open to immigration. Historically, we haven't been able to keep people in the country. It's like 3.5 million people in the country. So we have a very open immigration policy, and it's relatively easy to acquire legal residency in Uruguay. Our government passed a law that even with a small amount of investment in the country, or buying a property in the country, you can have legal residency for fiscal purposes as well. So we're very open to receiving people from different countries, and we're not considered a problematic country with the Uruguayans that leave the country and look to immigrate to other countries. Our largest colonies are in Argentina, Spain, Sweden, Australia, Canada. You can find Uruguayans all over the world. Here in the US, our biggest colonies are New Jersey and in Miami. So yeah.
There's a question that, do you know if the director has directed any film since this film, since Mr. Kaplan?
Oh, he has directed. He has a few films. There's one other. I'm trying to remember them. You got me on the spot. I'll have to Google that. No, he's actually filming in India right now. That's why he wasn't available for this question and answer period. We asked the producers if they could contact him and have him participate in this. So he does have many films. I can't remember any others. I'm Googling it. I'm cheating a little bit.
I think the person just wanted to know if he had directed since Mr. Kaplan.
Yeah, and he's actually been A Bad Day to Go Fishing, A 9-Mile Walk, The 12-Year Night. Those are some of the 12-Year Night was presented. I think it was available on Netflix. So yeah, he does have a lot of different films. If you look them up, a lot of them are probably available online as well, and you can see them for free or on these different platforms that you have available here. There's a good one. It's called Bad Day to Go Fishing. It's an interesting film. I was going to propose it, but it wasn't available. It's one of his films as well.
So if you had to describe the culture in Uruguay, there's a question, is what would you say best describes the culture in Uruguay?
Uruguay has a very diverse culture. It's a very multicultural country. People might be surprised. It's very European. For many years, we looked to Europe. Our first constitution was influenced by the American Revolution, by the French Revolution. We have very strong democratic values, equality, freedom. Those are very important for us. We have very strong European influence in our music and in our food. We also have some African influence. Uruguay used to be a slave port. A lot of slaves were brought by the Europeans through Uruguay, and during the colonial years, slavery was very present. And there's one music style, for example, candombe, which is actually declared a cultural heritage by UNESCO. We have the two cultural expressions, tango and candombe. Tango, we share it with Argentina. Those were both born with the influences of, tango with the influence of European, Italian culture in the lower neighborhoods of Buenos Aires and Montevideo, with a little bit of influence of that African beat. And we have candombe, which is a musical form that was developed by the descendants of the Africans in our country. So that there's certain types of drums. We have different drums that are played differently, and they're played in groups. And what the people would do in the different neighborhoods, they would communicate through the drums. So they would gather outside of the city in colonial days, and they would play the drum. It would be their way of communicating from one neighborhood to another. And they would have a day when they would come together in the calling, la chamada, where the chamadas, they would come together in the different groups from the different neighborhoods, because they all have their different style of playing. They would come and they would celebrate their African ancestry and their African roots. And that's actually one of the groups that participate in our carnival. We have the longest carnival in the world. The carnival competition lasts over 40 days. It opens with a parade along the main street of the main avenue of Montevideo. And then we have a carnival competition where different categories of musical groups participate in this contest. And we also have the Chamada parade, which pays a tribute to that African ancestry. So we have all groups from all over the country that come and compete, and they have this huge parade where they play the drums and they dance, and they have all these different cultural symbols, and my sister actually dances in one of them with my niece. So it's very colorful, it's very loud, and it's very emotional too, because each character in the group that performs tells a story and recalls the sad history of the Africans in our country.
Thank you. There's one question here that asks, what do you think would surprise people in the United States most by Uruguayans?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
What do you think would surprise us here in the United States most about Uruguay?
Well, I think, I think people would be surprised to find that Uruguay has a very high level of development. We rate very high in the Human Development Index. We're very connected. We have, fiber optic network throughout Montevideo. Everyone, I think there are more cell phones in Uruguay than people. We have a very strong democracy based on the rule of law. We're very respectful of sovereignty, the separation of powers in the state, the freedom, respect for freedom, fundamental liberties. at a time when there's a global decline in democracy, Uruguay really has been able to maintain and strengthen its institutions, and Uruguayans are very proud of that. We have an exhibit here at the embassy that shows that. Actually, we've had it all through last year, that shows that peaceful transition of power from one political party to another. The presidents will the previous and the new president, they'll have a ceremony where they'll meet, they'll hug, they'll pass the presidential sash over the presidential band, and they remain civil, and people are very respectful of that. I think the dictatorship really marked us in a way where we don't want to have that happening ever again. So when we go and vote, it's a celebration. So you have people celebrating on the streets with different political colors side by side, everyone supporting their party or whatever, and you don't have violence, you don't have people reacting negatively to that, because that's part of what we are. That diversity is important, and it's important to have that change in a society, because society grows and the democracy grows when you have diverse points of view. So that on one side, and then on the other side, my friends that have visited Uruguay, they've really enjoyed the people. Uruguayans are very friendly and outgoing. They have a lot of solidarity when they see a lost tourist, and they'll try to speak to them in English. So they love to practice their English with tourists. Yeah, so we do it. It's a diverse country culturally, and also, as I was saying earlier, just the countryside, the beaches, it's a small country, but you have a lot of different options, and sometimes that can be very surprising as well. People don't expect that.
I want to thank you so much for being here with us this evening. I know you've had a long day, and we really appreciate your being with us and sharing with us so much about Uruguay. There are many more questions here that we would like to go on, but I know that you've had a long day.
So I'm still at the embassy.
Would you like to say anything to close with?
Yes, I'd really like to thank you for organizing this and for reaching out to us. It's been wonderful working with you, and I thank all the audience, all the people that are out there who watched the film. Thank you for accompanying us, and well, hopefully we'll be able to do this again soon.
His Excellency as well. Patrick, I want to say thank you, our technical person who answered some of your questions when you had a little bit of a difficulty at the beginning. So we hope you all were able to get into the film. And you, the audience, we're so grateful to you sharing with us and being with us here this evening. Next week, I hope you will come, because we have a little bit of a different film next week, because it will be some shorts on dance next week. We hope you will join us next week, February the 14th. Thank you so much again, everyone. Have a good evening, and we'll see you next week.